What's up, everybody? Today we are reviewing number stories. A number story is a math equation given to us through a story. So we need to use our math skills as well as our reading skills to help us solve what is given to us. So let's start out with a number story. I'm going to give you some strategies that you can use to help you understand what the question is asking you and also help you solve it. So the first thing that I like to do when I'm presented with a number story is I like to make sure that I read it at least 2 times. Now, the reason I'm reading it at least twice, and you can read it more if you want, but you need to be able to read it more than one time because you want to fully understand not only what is happening in the number story, but what is the question that is being asked. So let's read this number story. There are 9 birds in a tree. Some birds flew away. 5 birds stayed. How many birds flew away? Now, I've read it once, and I'm going to read it again just so I fully understand. There are 9 birds in a tree. Some birds flew away. 5 birds stayed. How many birds flew away? Okay, so now that I understand that this word problem is talking about birds in a tree, I'm going to go back through this word problem and I'm going to pick out the important information. I'm also going to be drawing pictures to go along with this word story to kind of help me see what this word story is talking about. So let's start with that first line. There are 9 birds in a tree. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to underline that part right there that says 9 birds because that's telling me how many birds are in the tree. And then I'm going to put 9 dots to represent my birds. Now, what I want you to notice is I didn't spend a long time drawing these dots. I didn't draw out each individual bird with the feathers and the beak because that takes too long. All I have to do to represent my birds is put 9 dots. Okay, so now that I've read the first line of the sentence and I understand what it's saying, I underlined the 9 birds, I drew the picture to represent the 9 birds, I'm going to move on to the next sentence. Some birds flew away. Now, when it says some birds flew away, does that tell us the number of birds that flew away? Exactly. No, it does not. All it says is some birds flew away, so we don't know exactly how many. So, keeping that in mind, knowing that we have birds in a tree, we have 9 of them, and some are going to fly away, we don't know how many are going to fly away. I'm going to move on to the next line of the problem. 5 birds stayed. Now, do you think you know what piece of information we should underline in this sentence? Very good. I'm going to underline 5 birds stayed. Now, the reason I'm underlining 5 birds is because that's telling us how many of the birds are staying, and I want to make sure I underline that they stayed as well. So I'm underlining this whole sentence 5 birds stayed. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark which 5 birds stayed. So what I like to do is I like to draw an X over the dots. You could also put a box around them or do anything that you want that helps you see the 5 birds that stayed. So now that I've drawn my picture to help me understand what's been going on in this number story, I'm going to go on to the last line of the number story. And the last line of the number story is very important because it's usually the line that's asking the question. So how many birds flew away? Well, let's look at our picture and see if we can answer this question. So I know that there's 9 birds represented by my dots, and I know that 5 birds stayed. I drew the X over those 5 dots, letting me know that those are the birds that stayed. Can you look at our picture and see if you can tell how many birds flew away? So I'm looking at my drawing and I see that there's 4 dots that don't have an X over them. Remember, the X is over the birds that stayed. So the 4 dots that don't have an X must be the birds that flew away. So how many birds flew away? The answer is 4. So let's see if we can represent this number story with an equation. I actually could do a couple different equations. I could do 9, the number of birds in the tree, minus 5, the birds that stayed, equals 4. Or I could do 5, the birds that stayed, plus 4, the birds that flew away, equals the total, which is 9. So just for some extra practice, let's do one more number story. Mr. Hufford had 12 cupcakes. He ate some of them. There were 6 left over. How many cupcakes did Mr. Hufford eat? So I'm going to give you some time to solve this on your own and use all of the strategies we just practiced, and then I'm going to check back in with you and see how you did. So good luck. All right, let's see how you did. So remember, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to read my number story at least 2 times. Sometimes it's going to take more than 2 times, but at least 2. So Mr. Hufford had 12 cupcakes. He ate some of them. There were 6 left over. How many cupcakes did Mr. Hufford eat? Okay, let me read that one more time. Mr. Hufford had 12 cupcakes. He ate some of them. There were 6 left over. How many cupcakes did Mr. Hufford eat? Okay, so now that we've read this twice, we understand that it's about Mr. Hufford and him eating cupcakes. This is a very believable story. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back line by line and underline my important information and draw my pictures to help me understand. So let's start with this first line. Mr. Hufford had 12 cupcakes. So what I think is important in this line and what I'm going to underline is that I had 12 cupcakes. So now that I've read this first line over, I've underlined the important information, the 12 cupcakes. The next thing I'm going to do is draw my cupcakes. Remember, we don't want to spend a long time drawing out each cupcake with the icing and all the different toppings that we could put on it. All I had to do was put 12 dots, and I know that those 12 dots represent my cupcakes. So now that I've drawn the 12 cupcakes, I'm going to move on to the next line. He ate some of them. So even though this doesn't tell us how many that he ate, it does let us know that he will be eating some. So I'm not going to underline anything in this sentence, but I am going to keep in mind that Mr. Hufford did eat some of the cupcakes. The next line of the number story, there were 6 left over, gives us a valuable piece of information. That piece of information is that there were 6 left over. So I'm going to underline that. So now that I've underlined that, I want to include that piece of information in my drawing. So remember, I like to make X's. You can circle, you can make boxes. It's up to you. But I am going to put an X over the 6 cupcakes that were left over. So now that I've included that piece of information in my drawing, just by looking at my drawing, I already kind of understand what's going on here. I have 12 cupcakes altogether represented by my dots, and the red X's represent the 6 that are left over. So let's move to the last line of the number story. So looking at the last line of the number story, it says, how many cupcakes did Mr. Hufford eat? So this is what they're asking us to solve. By looking at my drawing, I see that there's 12 dots representing our cupcakes. I see that there's red X's over 6 of them because those were left over. So all I have to do is count the dots that don't have a red X. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 cupcakes is how many Mr. Hufford ate. So now that we've solved our number story, let's see if we can represent that using different equations. The first equation that I could write would be 12 minus 6 equals 6. That's the total number of cupcakes, 12, minus the 6 cupcakes that were left over equals 6. The second equation I could write would be the number of cupcakes left over, 6, plus the number of cupcakes that Mr. Hufford ate, 6, equals the total number of cupcakes, which is 12. What I really want you to take away from this lesson is the importance of understanding what information to use when drawing your picture. Drawing pictures really help us understand what is going on in the number story. All right, that's it for today's lesson. Thanks for watching. Happy Friday. I will see you next week. I want you all to make sure you're completing the worksheets that I provided to you in Google Classroom. And friends, keep up the good work. I've checked in with a few of you and have seen some of the work you've been doing with my math videos, and it makes me so happy to see that you're working from home so hard. So keep it up, and I will see you on Monday.